from end to end. And that's why we need it. I'm so glad you recorded right then. But so when, when you get to a point where you're meeting with these legislators who have no concept about what these bills are about, because, and no, to no fault of their own, there's so many topics that bills can be about. You can only know so much. You really have to be an effective communicator and someone who understands the subject matter so that they come to you as the subject matter expert. So that's our goal as advocates, right? So bill basics. When we're talking about bill history, we kind of went over this a little bit, so I'll sort of speed run through this. We have the New Jersey Legislature website. Um, the bill search page is going to have your bill statuses, dates introduced, amended, reported, when it moved out of committee, what the committee votes were, what the floor votes were, whether it moved to the governor's desk. And then also, you want to make sure you're subscribing for bills. The bill tracking service, it's free. You can track as many. I want to say that actually there might be a limit eventually, but you can track a ton of bills, ton of different topics, subject matters. You can get a notification when certain subjects are introduced, certain keywords. It's great. Um, so I am going to open. Can you guys see my internet screen? This bill? Okay.
Um,
You can see it here.
I see the PowerPoint.
Okay. Hold on a second. What do I do? Do this maybe. All right. Can you see me
Oh,
switching between?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
So, this bill is a human trafficking fine. So it basically um creates a fining system that if you are someone who is soliciting a prostitute, when you pay your legal fees and your fines, that money goes to the Human Trafficking Survivor Assistance Fund. It is an incredible bill. And I just want to kind of like run through it. So when we're looking at bills, actually, let me actually go back.
And
Hi.
Sarah, is this new legislation or is this something that was,
No. So actually that's what I was just gonna do because I just realized what is it, 1185. I just realized that I meant to link the um so not a new bill. We have a last session bill number. So this has been reintroduced a handful of times. Again, one of the ways we can tell that is because it was introduced on the very first day of the legislature, but also it has a last session bill number. The other way that we can tell is that, sorry, I gotta move this camera around. Pre-filed for introduction means that it's a reintroduction bill. So when we're looking at this, obviously we know A means assembly, S means Senate. Some bills will have an identical bill number and some bills won't. One really big flashing light that a bill is not going to be successful is if it sits for a while without a partner in the other chamber. You always want to make sure that there's two because they cannot move. A bill can move through the assembly and then be introduced in the Senate, but if they're not moving through concurrently, it starts to be a little bit of a disconnect. You're unlikely to have a bill that's going to be signed into law. So A is Senate, A is Assembly, S is Senate. You might see bills that are AJR, SJR, ARSR, or ACR, SCR. These stand for Assembly Joint Resolution, Senate Joint Resolution, Assembly Resolution, Senate Resolution. I'm going to level with you. I don't know the difference and why they're like that. I think it has something to do with how they're introduced, but it really doesn't. I've never known it to matter. And ACR and SCR are ceremonial resolutions. Those are going to be the things you see they presented at the beginning, what we call the ceremonials, to the basketball team that won states and things like that. Or it could be to make something a day, like so-and-so's day, things like that. So when we hop into the bill, we have a couple sections. So we have at the top, we have, sponsored by and co-sponsored by. We have the synopsis, which for this is upgrades prostitution as a patron and directs fines collected to the Human Trafficking Survivor Assistance Fund. Um, and then we have the statement, um, which is what I just, sorry, statement's down here. Then we have the statement. This is always where you want to scroll to first and to read. So this is going to be, oops, sorry about that, layman's terms of what the bill actually does. So I always 100% of the time am going to read the statement first and then scroll back up and look for sections you have questions on. For instance, now I want to have a question on the prostitution offender program. I can find that in the text. And then at the end, and I don't know that this has one, there will be a fiscal note. And if it has a fiscal note, Yes, and this one does. You can click the fiscal note and you're able to read it. For this one, it's indeterminate. Like I think like 95% of fiscal notes are indeterminate, honestly. Very rarely do you get a solid, 1.5 million. And the reason this fiscal note's indeterminate is because we don't know. We can estimate, we can use prior data. We don't know how many people are going to be arrested for soliciting a prostitute in 2026, right? Or whenever this bill takes place. So, um, they're really unable to tell what the increase and decrease is. I would say again, like 95% of the time, the fiscal note is indeterminate. But it's good to have because if you get a fiscal note that says it's going to cost the state $5 million, you better have a really good reason for costing the state that kind of money, and vice versa. Um, so when you're looking at these bills, you want to identify what is being created, what's being changed, what's being repealed. Are we changing a previous law that existed? Are we updating it? Is it something brand new, a new concept? What are we creating? What are we removing? Are we creating a new department? For instance, in the state, we just split what's called DMAVA, which is the Department of Military and Veteran Affairs. It's now, as we're jokingly calling it, instead of DMAVA, it's now DEVA and DMA. And that was a bill. And so collectively, the people who were pushing for that bill had to justify why was it important to duplicate this effort, right? We had previously merged them. Why do we need to divest them of each other? And the importance was veteran services were getting pushed underneath military services. So it made sense I think it was 2.5 or $3 million. It made sense to kind of put that into the state budget. Again, when you're researching these bills, again, exactly as I said, you want to have those funding implications. Is it going to be a funded mandate or an unfunded mandate to a municipality or to a county or to a school district, to voters, to taxpayers, or to the state? And who is directly being impacted? Who's being helped and who's being hurt? Let's say, and I'm just going to make something up here. We have a bill that says everyone who makes over $50,000 has to pay an extra tax of 10% into the state. And everyone who makes less than $50,000 gets that 10% back, right? We know that's going to hurt everyone that makes over $50,000. It's going to help everybody who makes under $50,000, right? Now you know how to proceed with that bill. Another note down here, legal language. Let me just see. I don't know if there's anything in here. Yeah, so you'll see legal language in here. This is like a 2C law. 2C is the criminal code. If you see codes like that, you want to go back and research them. The easiest way to do that is literally just to copy this, drop it into Google, it'll pull it right up for you. And now here's the prostitution offender program. Justia is probably one of the better websites for this. So that's kind of the structure of a bill. Oh my gosh, this is so hard to go to the next one on. Hang on a second. There you go. So we talked about sponsors, co-sponsors. We all have dealt with who is the sponsor of a bill, who's not. But the prime sponsor is who you want to be dealing with. Anyone who is a second prime sponsor, a co-prime sponsor, or a co-sponsor is not the person leading the bill. So that when you look at this page here, you want to be dealing with Carol Murphy. Unfortunately, Antoine McClellan didn't have much say in this bill. He's just someone who jumped on as a supporter. And these people are simply saying, hey, we absolutely co-sign this. We think this is super cool. But Carol Murphy is the driver of this bill. She is the person who introduced the bill, who had the concept, who helped to craft the legislation. Really important thing to look at is bipartisan support. Antoine McClellan is a South Jersey Republican, and Carol Murphy is a Central Jersey Democrat. That is a bill that is going to the moon. Like that is like the dream to have bipartisan, multi parts of the state support. You're going places with that. So, and then when you look at the co-sponsors, we have Republican, Democrat, Republican, Republican, Democrat, Republican, Republican, Democrat, Democrat, Democrat. Fantastic bipartisan support. All of these members are well respected. This bill was moving. And as we can see, it moved pretty quickly on this end. So, and again, like if you know who you're dealing with, you know how you can kind of work with who is pushing the legislation. And if you're calling the co-sponsor and saying this legislation is really important, and they're saying, yeah, like I know, but what do you want me to do about it, right? You want to make sure you're calling the right person. Bill tracking. So
Sarah, so just a question there. So
yes.
we really should be speaking to the primary sponsor.
Yes, 100% of the time, the first person listed here.
Okay.
Again, Antoine McClellan has sway over the bill, but he is simply on there as someone who says, hey, you know what? I'm ready to push for this bill with you. But Carol Murphy has the power to call OLS and say, I need an amendment. I need to make this change. So I'll give you an example. I'm working with a client right now on a bill that has to do with packaging. And I have the co-sponsor, so the second person on this bill, ready to roll. She supports my changes, my amendments. She understands where I'm coming from. The prime sponsor hates my amendments. They will never get on that bill. So it doesn't matter that I got everyone else on board and calling him. And sometimes that helps, right? So he said no. So I went and I called, let's say this was the bill. I went and I called every single one of these people to call him, right? Still didn't work. Que sera. But this first person is who you need to be dealing with, because anyone else, unfortunately, is just a supporter of the bill and not the driver. They're just passengers. So bill tracking, very, very cool service that NJ Ledge offers. I highly recommend using it. I don't unfortunately use it, so I don't know if I don't have a login. But I highly recommend logging into this, using it. The bill tracking is incredible. You can search by, you can track by topic. So if you're picking human trafficking as your SPAC topic, you can get a notification in your email inbox every time a bill that comes underneath this human trafficking subject drops. It's incredible. So highly recommend signing up for that. I know they talked about that a little bit as well during our OLS thing. So bill analysis. This is where we kind of get into it. So as you're reading these bills and you're going through it, you need to address immediately, what is the problem? What is the problem? Why did this legislator wake up one morning and say we must have this bill go through? And that's going to inform who it benefits and also who it's costing. Because there's really never going to be an impactful bill that doesn't cost someone something. And it is a constant balance at the state level to say, okay, this bill is helping teachers, but it's costing taxpayers. And how much is it costing taxpayers? Is it worth it to help the teachers, right? And so they're constantly playing this push and pull at the state level. So you want to make sure that you have an absolute handle on on who is benefiting, it's costing. Using that human trafficking bill example, it's benefiting people that are benefiting from that human trafficking survivors fund, and it's costing the Johns. Sounds like a win-win at the state level, right? Um, and as you read through it the first time and subsequent times, you want to start to think, who is going to oppose this bill? Who's going to be against me testifying? But who is going to be supportive of me? Is it going to be a certain industry? Is it going to be advocates like me? Is it going to be state agencies, state departments, other community groups? For instance, you could have a bill that maybe you're really supported by a bunch of, like, the American Cancer Society and Leukemia and Lymphoma Society and all these things, but your opposition is a pharma company, right? So you have to weigh kind of, how am I going to gamify and sort of strategically get around someone that maybe has more money, more power, more ability to be present than I do? And how can and we'll talk about coalitions in a little bit, which is something I think, we already do a little bit, we might want to jump into a little bit more. How do I build a coalition, or how do I kind of appropriately look at who else supports this so that we can all move forward together? And then we talked a little bit about fiscal impact. Is it costing? Is it saving? Is the juice worth the squeeze? So you want to have all of this information in your head or on paper as you're going through this bill, because this is all information that you need to impart onto other advocates, onto members of the legislature, excuse me, members of the legislature, and in your testimony as well. And the next thing we kind of move on to is, once you're feeling settled in the bill topic and the meat and potatoes of the bill, is to look at stakeholder mapping. Who is affected by this bill? Using that human trafficking bill again, it's going to affect negatively, but it's going to affect people who patronize prostitutes. It's going to affect sex workers. It's going to affect those who operate in the world of sex work as support staff, right? People like therapists or other people What I'm picturing in my head is Sister Peg from SVU, but other people who are in the world of supporting sex workers. It's going to affect how police do their job, right? So these are the people who might have an opinion on this bill. It might affect nonprofits who support sex workers through residential programs or things like that. They're going to have an opinion on how this program operates. Human trafficking groups are going to have an opinion on it. You want to make sure that you are aware of every direction in which opposition or support might be able to come in. So that stakeholder mapping is really important. And on the other side of it, you want to identify power mapping. Who's making the decision on this bill? What committee is it going to? How can I get to this committee chair? Who might be somebody who's a decision maker on this bill who might really support it? Like let's say, for instance, the human trafficking um, advocate in the attorney general's office. They might think this bill is the greatest thing ever. I need to get in front of them to make sure they see this bill so that they can attack it from, from this direction while I'm attacking it from this direction. And committee chairs and leadership matter more than the bill sponsors. So if you can get to the bill sponsor, if you can get to the bill sponsor and have the bill sponsor ask to have their bill posted, it's fantastic. That's a direction you should go in. However, if you can go to the committee chair, they're making a list independently. They're looking at their own agendas. And they're saying, wow, this year in my committee, I really want to work on human trafficking. Let me go through all of the bills referred to my committee and pull out the human trafficking ones. They might never get a bill request from Joe Smith, who had a human trafficking bill that's been reintroduced 5 times. But now this topic is on the table, they're pulling out all those bills. So we really want to make sure that we're communicating with leadership, that we're communicating, and leadership being the executive directors of the partisan offices, and leadership like the way that we had that meeting with DeMayo. We want to be talking to the speaker. We want to be talking to the Senate president. We want to be talking to the Senate minority leader, who's Anthony Bucco. Like that type of leadership is going to influence what goes on in a committee more, as much as, but more than just the bill sponsor requesting it. And then the governor's role. What is the governor's opinion on this topic? How is it going to reflect on the governor's um, legacy? Is this something that has a huge fiscal note? Might be a really good idea. I'm going to make something up right now. We're not doing this, but snap. We're about to hit a snap cliff. Maybe tomorrow the Senate president decides, you know what? We can't let. I wish, cross your fingers. I wish they would. We can't let people go hungry. Let's shovel $25 million into feeding hungry people. The governor might say, I hate that idea because I don't want to go out as the governor who threw $25 million out into the state, right? And so now you have to look at how somebody else's political priorities play into your bill. Now, again, I'm using this great bill, this human trafficking bill that is a all win, no lose bill. So I don't see an issue there. But you have to be aware of that. For instance, a great example, the governor just conditionally vetoed one of my bills. It was the Reproductive Health Travel Advisory, which was a bill that basically created this travel health advisory for pregnant women who were traveling to other states in the United States where they would not have the same reproductive health care rights as they would in New Jersey. The governor conditionally vetoed that because he said, wait a second, we as a state do not have the resources at the Department of Health or Department of Consumer Affairs to research the ever-changing abortion and reproductive laws in 49 other states. We don't have the ability to maintain that database accurately and safely to communicate it to our residents. So we're going to condition, they go through and they cross things out, they give us suggestions, and then we go back to the drawing board. But that's something that you need to be aware of, is how the governor is going to feel about putting his name literally on that. And so here's an example I gave of bill on food security. It might involve the Department of Human Services. It might involve Department of Agriculture and the Food Security Advocate. It might have schools that are interested in testifying, local food banks, right? So you can get all directions coming at you. Any questions on that? I know there's a lot of information in one slide.
No questions, but this is very much tying into the policy briefs that again, this is Cheryl's leading our our training series here, and policy briefs was the assignment for today. So
Yeah, and I think I have a slide, yeah, on a case study, so it's a little bit of a policy brief. So
yeah, so no, I was just saying this is so timely and so really exciting stuff. So yeah, keep going. I don't want to interrupt you. It's
yeah,
really
no, for
really
sure.
good information.
So as we talk about policy briefs, keep it brief. Policy brief should be one pager. No one's going to read more than one page, unfortunately, just realistically. But always reference the bill number in your communications. My favorite personal thing to do when I am sending an email is I reference the bill number. Link the bill to NJ Ledge in the bill number. And then after it, I put the parentheses of, I don't even know. I'm just clicking something random. I don't know what this bill is. I always put this in parentheses because no one knows bill numbers. There's a handful of bills you can know. Sometimes like the budget in the Senate is always S and then the year. So like this year the Senate bill, I always know this. The Senate bill was for the budget was S 2026 because it's always the budget bill. But otherwise, you never are going to know the bill number. It's there's 13,000 bills that are introduced every session. So I always like to, when I'm emailing, write the bill number, link it, and then afterwards in parentheses, put either the topic of the bill or the explanation of the bill. But be concise. They want bullet points. They want to hear this bill sucks because it's going to take away money from kids in schools, and my roads are going to be terrible, and people are going to move out of your district. They want to hear the real community impacts. Their goal is to keep the constituents in their district happy, healthy, and able to stay in New Jersey. That's every single legislator's priority. So be concise and clear about how this bill is going to affect that bottom line. Um, Big tip is to build relationships with legislative staff. I know I'm very biased when I say this, but staff run the world. Our members are incredible, but staff run the world. I have gotten bills through where either my member didn't even realize what was like going on until I briefed them at like the last minute, or I've worked with staff completely and never spoken to a member on a bill, and it's gone to the governor's desk. Staff run the world. They are who the member is going to for advice. They are who are they our legislators are part-time. We do have incredible legislators that do this full-time. One example I'm going to give is Victoria's legislator, Roy Fryman. He is in that office 40 to 50 hours a week full-time because he's retired. But for instance, our majority leader, Lou Greenwald, a full-time attorney, right? And so these are people who have real jobs, and are doing this on the side. So there's no expectation that they are going to know everything that's going on, that they're going to have a finger on the pulse of everything. This is a part-time job. It's intended to be. So, but the legislative staff are not. The legislative staff, it is their whole career, it is their whole life, and they are getting paid to be covering all these things that the member cannot. Make those relationships with their staff. Know everybody's chief of staff. Know the staff in the partisan offices. They're just as important as relationships you're building with the members. Um, Track your amendments. I will give an example. I know a member who will not get on a bill as a co-sponsor until the bill goes through the second house. I mean, excuse me, the second committee, until the bill is referred to the second committee, meaning it's gone through one committee and all major changes have been made. Imagine you hop on a bill and the bill is the human trafficking bill we used. Fine patrons of sex workers, send the money to the human trafficking fund, right? Now imagine you jump on, you're like, that's a fantastic idea. I love that concept. Let's do it. The bill goes through the first committee and lots of conversation happens, and all of a sudden now it's fine, fine patrons of sex workers, send the money to the Casino Redevelopment Authority. You don't want to be on that bill. That's a terrible bill, right? So really track amendments. Bills can change so drastically before they go through, and you never know at what point. A bill can be introduced one way, it can change in the first committee, it can change in the second committee, it can change in the other house and have to be amended to match. There's just a lot that can go on. Track the bills. Biggest advice. And one way of doing that, and the way I always do, is when I'm covering a bill really closely, I make sure I'm putting slips in at committee because sometimes they will pull the slips and email you. I make sure I'm communicating with the committee aide. So if a bill is going through the AFI committee, the Assembly Financial Institutions Committee, I'm communicating with Sonia and Mark, who are the committee aides. And I'm going to make sure that they know that I am a major stakeholder on that bill and I need to know when changes are made. And that information is available publicly. Remember, we went through the NJ Ledge website and we have the committees. I have their email here, so I can go through and say, okay, I have a bill going through Aging and Human Services. I need to email Sherwood and say, Sherwood, this bill, like I'm a major stakeholder. I'm going to be testifying. I need to know if there's changes coming. And he's going to be like, got it, got you. These offices are relatively small. Maybe there's 20 people that are dealing with the policy. You can make these relationships pretty quick. Um, Building a coalition with like-minded advocate. A rising tide raises all ships. So if we are working on a topic and NJ Citizen Action or the League of Conservation Voters or the Human Trafficking Coalition, I mean, I know they're kind of aligned with this anyway, the Human Trafficking Coalition or NJ CASA, which is Survivors of Sexual Assault, if these groups are also working on it, let's get together. Let's talk about what you're working on, right? They might be working on amendments because they're subject matter expert. I'm going to use CASA as an example. NJ CASA, the Coalition Against Sexual Assault, they might be working on amendments because they're subject matter experts, and we might not know about them, but we might think they're fantastic, right? So we want to make sure that we're always communicating, paying attention to who testifies, even if it's just listening in a committee, and paying attention to who's getting up and who's getting up and testifying against it, so we know not to ask them. That's something to be aware of. And then, biggest tip, follow the red book. The red book is going to be your Bible. You should always have it handy and make sure that outside of any other advice, you are staying within the league's guidelines. And then I just did a quick case study. A2141, which of course I did not link. So let me just pull it up. I meant to link it in here and I forgot. A2141 is a grocery bill. It requires supermarkets to donate food under certain circumstances. It's sponsored by Bill Moen, so now we know who to contact, right? We know who might support it. Shama Hader, who is currently the chair of, what is she the chair of? I'm so sorry, Shama. She's the
Children,
chair of food
family,
security.
and
I thought she
food.
was Children, Family, Food Security.
We just met with her,
Um,
by the way. We just had a meeting with her yesterday.
Oh, she's oh, love her. And Bill Moen right now is the chair of tourism and gaming. Now the reason that's important is because Atlantic City is a food desert. So now we have the guy who's in tourism and gaming. So we got a little Atlantic City focus. We have Shama Hader, whose focus is food security. We have Sterling Stanley, all around great guy, love him. We do not have bipartisan support on this bill. So that's something to pay attention to. However, it is fully supported by the majority party. So now we know all of that. We can see here 1/9/2024. It is a rollover bill. We have a last session bill number. What are we? Does anyone see what we're missing up here?
The Senate, there's no,
There's no Senate. There's
there's
no
no
Senate
Senate.
partner,
Yeah.
and there's been no Senate partner.
Mm.
So the whole time, the whole 4 years that this has been rolling, there's been no Senate partner. So I think this is a fantastic bill. I see full majority party support, right? I see it's even gone through a committee. Shama put it through her committee, right? Right away. Two
And then
months into the
she's
session.
also on the health committee as a
Mhm.
member. So it went through the health and
Well, it
she's
was referred to health, right?
referred to health, right? Hmm.
It was reported out of health and referred to children and families. It was reported out. It's ready to go to the floor a whole year ago, right? And nothing moved. So now we've gone through, we've seen the sponsors. We checked if it rolled over. So we know that last session it didn't make it through. And we know where it's at now. So let's real quick look. We have some votes here to look at. Now, again, you're going to kind of have to go off memory on this, so I'm just going to do it, but eventually you'll kind of get a vibe for who's who. This bill went along party lines, except for Nancy Munoz and LD21 abstained. Now, Nancy is famous for abstaining when she doesn't feel like she has all the information. She's extremely detail oriented. So if she does not feel that she has a full handle on the information in front of her, she's not going to vote. So what that tells me is maybe she thought maybe there was somebody had said there was an amendment coming or something where she said, nope, I don't have enough information. I'm not ready to make a decision on this. But otherwise, this followed party lines. And then jumping into Assembly Children and Families, it's a bit of a smaller um, uh, group of people. But again, Paul Kinitra and Ora Dunn, the two Republicans on the committee, abstained. Again, that's telling me that there was probably some amendment coming, and both of them are also very detail oriented, where they're going to say, I don't have enough information to cast my vote. Let me hold and see what happens. So what's that's telling me is that maybe there's something going on with the bill. I don't know. When I'm looking at something that's live, I'll know based on what was said in committee. You can also go back and listen to the committee if you want to hear why somebody like Ora Dunn or Paul Kinitra or Nancy Munoz abstained. However, let's pull it up. And actually, here we're going to get technical. I can see here because the statement changed twice that amendments were made. Um, so here we probably changed the definition of a grocery store or supermarket or grocery store. Um, Probably just made it larger. Um, but again, so we want to look at the bill structure and what its impacts are. Here we see an area of 16,000 square feet or greater. Off the top of my head, I don't know how big that is. Let's say it's your standard, let's say it's smaller than your standard ShopRite. So let's say every Saker ShopRite is now going to have to make this reasonable effort to donate all food fit for human consumption, which would otherwise be discarded. That is a massive effort by ShopRite. So Lori Price Abrams, who is a lobbyist for Wakefern, is going to be in that room discussing why this is bad for her client. The NJ food, oh my gosh, blanking on what they're called. But Mary Ellen Papard from the Food Coalition or whatever they're called, she's going to be in there because they represent the grocery stores. She's going to be in talking about what a cost, right? Think about the cost. What this is, I'm just using ShopRite, sorry, ShopRite. What this is going to cost a New Jersey employer like ShopRite, who I think is like the third or fourth largest employer in the state. Think about what this is going to cost them, right? Could it cause grocery stores to have to close because they can't take on the cost? Could it cause companies like ShopRite or Wakefern to have to pay their employees less because they're taking on the overhead? So we have to think about it in a holistic way because conceptually, we love the bill. It gives food to people that need it. However, we have to look at the actual viability of doing it. If we put ShopRite out of business, is that helpful? Right? So that's when we talk about, like, I kind of jumped into stakeholders and coalition building. So you're going to have groups like NJ Citizen Action, or Appleseed actually is their subsidiary that deals with food security. You're going to have groups like the New Jersey Food Security Advocate or KUMAC, one of the largest food banks on the East Coast. You're going to have those groups that are saying, absolutely, yes, let's go. But then you're going to have some of these employers, some of these grocery stores, some of these grocery store coalitions saying, hold on, we love it, but it's not scalable and we can't afford to do it. And this bill might close every grocery store that's smaller than ShopRite or something similar. So we kind of look at all those stakeholders, coalition building, possible opposition. And I kind of jumped into this. What does everybody think could be preventing this from moving? Or maybe what could be preventing it from being even introduced in the Senate?
The cost impact,
The cost impact.
yeah, money.
And actually we have a technical review. I didn't realize that. That's fun. Oh, they didn't up. Yeah. So okay, so it's not fun. So these are the amendments. The technical review added 16,000 feet and defined what a food supplier is. Sometimes you can get some cool technical reviews that actually like grow it out and talk about the cost. Um, while this is not certified for a fiscal note because it's not going to cost the state anything likely, but I can only imagine that the grocery stores are going to come out and be like, yeah, this is going to cost ShopRite, $1 billion and we're going to have to fire everyone. And so that's where you want to be aware of that before you come out and say, hey, this is the greatest bill I've ever seen in my life, and I will lay my reputation on the line to advocate for it. Maybe it's not the greatest bill. Maybe there's a better way to get food into the hands of people that need it because, and again, we're lucky in this state. Like that's ShopRite's intention. ShopRite does not want to throw out food when it could go to someone who can help, who it could help. Larry and Sarah and the people at ShopRite are very focused on this. But this way might not be the best way. Um, but let's say that we are in support of this bill and we don't care about the corporations, right? What who would need to get information to keep this bill moving? We don't have a Senate partner. We need to get somebody in the Senate on board with this bill. We need to take the bill and go to people in the Senate and option it around and say, do you like this? Would you like to introduce this? It's very important, and here's the reason. That's where your one pager is going to come in handy. And again, same thing, committee staff, leadership, You want to make sure that people have this bill in their head and they want to keep it moving. And then fact-based research. I just gave you a bunch of oppositional fact-based research, but at the same time, how many millions of pounds of food does a big brand like ShopRite or Stop and Shop or King's throw out on a daily, monthly basis, right? So you can, if you are such a core advocate of this bill that you say, I don't care how much it costs them, you can go in and say, hey, they're throwing out millions of pounds a year of food. And, one in six children in Jersey City is going to bed hungry. So, hey, legislature, figure it out. So you're going to want to you want to offer them fact-based research and succinct, as we talked about in the beginning, succinct, bullet-pointed, fact-based research. That if they have a question on something, they can follow up with you and say, hey, wait a second, you brought up that Hudson County throws out 173 million pounds of food waste a year that's viable. Where did you get that information and how can I find out more, right? So you want to be there as a resource to them. But yeah, I feel like that's kind of, you know, an an overview of a case study of how one might approach advocating for a bill and trying to figure out how to build the advocacy. Do you have any questions on the case study?
I think this is great. Sarah, this is amazing. Thank you so much. This was really good information, breaking it down, emphasizing succinct, fact-based bullet points, one pager. We all know that just in our own lives, whenever we're presenting to, whether it's through work or through the league or, whatever, whatever organization, it's important just to be as concise and clear as possible. And you've thrown out so much information. The staff are key. They run the world. You said that, the staff, the committee aides, we didn't even really think of that, or at least I didn't really think of that, the committee aides. And the top person that's listed on the bill as the primary sponsor, even though there might be a co-sponsor, nothing wrong with reaching out to the other folks on that's the co-sponsors or the secondary sponsor. But absolutely, honing in on that primary sponsor. So I mean, I took so many notes, I don't even know if I can read my writing. But the
Well, and I'm
power.
happy to answer any questions. Like, I mean, everybody has my email, but
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
just,
but anybody else that wants to like jump in and say anything, questions, I don't want to hog all the time.
yeah,
Anybody
and
else?
one thing I'll hit home to for everybody is that, as I said, our legislators are not policy area experts. They might be a teacher, or I'm going to use Nancy Munoz because she's one of my favorites. She's a nurse. This woman is a absolute firecracker on health policy. But I doubt that she's really, and she's great on education policy too. I doubt that she's like a super expert on like tax law, right? Just you cannot be an expert on everything. And when you look at the range of topics of bills that are introduced, sometimes bills are introduced and I'm like, why is that a bill? You want to know my favorite bill? This is my favorite bill that was ever introduced that horrifies me. A bill to regulate ice in the water that goes into the making of ice in New Jersey. So like when you buy ice, so this actually came up. I used to work for a member in Central Jersey, South Jersey, or down the shore, and this member introduced this bill, and I was like, I'm sorry, why did you have to introduce this bill? Like, hold up, we're not regulating the quality of the water. And he said, no, one of his constituents is an ice guy, a guy that sells ice, and came to him and said, I'm horrified by the state of my industry. I use clean filtered water. He's like, but there is no regulatory rule on what kind of water and water quality goes into making like a bag of ice. And I'm just like, okay, I can't even focus on what you're saying because I'm so horrified. It took me forever to get ice out of a machine after this. Um, so I found out the machines are usually only clean ice outside of your house. But so, and now the bill moved through, and I don't know whether it became law or not, but I was so it was this moment of like, I'm sorry, why do we have to legislate that? And so it's understanding kind of where these bills come from and how they come up and that there's some weird stuff. Another favorite of mine, big deal. I used to staff the chair of the agriculture committee. This was a major deal. We had people yelling. We had someone call our office and threaten us, like we had to call the troopers. Um, Shellfishers, like, so not clammers. Clammers were fine, I think, but shellfishers, so like oysters and mollusks, were not allowed to shellfish on Sundays. There was like a blue law, and some renegade young men were championing this law to be able to shellfish on Sundays. And the old men, the elderly shellfishers, were angry about it and didn't want to be forced to go out on Sunday as their competition went out. And there was like yelling matches. And meanwhile, my boss, who is Victoria's legislator, is a lifelong insurance guy, worked for Prudential his whole career. This man has never seen shellfish off of a plate. And he's just like watching this like a ping pong game. Like, what are we doing here? Like, I have no idea what's going on, right? Because he cannot be an expert in shellfish and. And so just to sum up, like every member is not going to know what you're talking about. And it could be something really high level or it could be something really in depth. And you're always going to find, first of all, you're always going to find a member that has a weird understanding of these issues. And you're always going to find a member that has no idea what you're talking about. And so just being a subject matter expert. And sometimes you're going to dig in and be a really weird subject matter expert. Like maybe this prostitution bill, somebody that was in SPAC a year or two ago, this came up and now they know how many Johns get arrested for prostitution and you have that number in your head. But you are going to become this policy expert on the subject matter that comes to you. I worked in my league's focus is in food security. I really find that to be a personal topic that I really find important. Hey, can somebody come let Maddie out? Sorry, my dog is finally tired of my voice. And I then staffed at the time before Shama came in. When Shama came in and became a chair, they moved some of the committees around, but it used to be agriculture and food security. So we focused on the marriage between farming and food security and, no farmers, no food. And I just became really ingratiated in this world. And so actually right now with the SNAP cliff coming, obviously this is something that really concerns me because it's a policy matter of my, or a subject matter I enjoy learning about and educating about. But I got on the phone with an old contact who's now the state food security advocate, and I talked to him about how SNAP might affect one of my clients. Professionally, I represent the federally qualified health centers, which are community-based health centers that see Medicaid un and underinsured patients that not based on their insurance status. So I got on the phone with him and I said, hey, how is this going to affect my FQHCs, right? Because food is medicine and almost 100% of their patients are going to be on SNAP. So how, what's the marriage here? So it's just becoming one of those like very odd policy experts and being the person that can say, hey, listen, wait a second. I know this fact. I know this to be true or this not to be true, or this is a piece of information that can help or hurt or what have you. So that's all it really comes down to.
Great. Anybody else? Questions for Sarah? No, Sarah, thank you.
Compliments, I
Of
guess, would be
course.
my only thing because it was a lot. So in
No,
a
I
very
know,
good
I know.
way.
It's
So
so
it's
like I
great.
kind of
So
try to
I'll have to
condense
listen
it.
to it again and again because it was very helpful. So thank you.
And I'm happy to answer
Sarah,
any questions. If people are watching the recording, hi. Happy to answer any questions. My
yeah,
information was on the
and for
slide.
right, and for the
And
purposes of that, since I did not record until sort of midway through, if you don't mind putting up your bio,
oh yeah.
again, just so that
Um,
we have that as part of this recording, and then I'll stop the recording.
yeah. Let me, oops, how do I share?
I like that you informed us about the statements on the bills, reading it in more layman terms, because we don't really understand all the terms.
No one does.
Yeah,
Not a
so
single soul reads an act, whereas no one understands that.
I'm
You scroll
oblivious
all the
to
way down.
those terms. So thank you for giving me those basics and showing me how to maneuver through the bills. That's very informative. Thank you so much.
No, of course, of course.
That's great. And then,
I
your
think
first,
this is where it kicked in. I don't think we need.
yeah, no, I mean, go back to the title, to the, yeah, how to read, track, and analyze New Jersey legislation.
That is great. This PowerPoint is amazing.
I take no credit for the PowerPoint. Cheryl told me to use Canva and it changed my life.
Oh, good. I'm good.
Love
Cheryl, I've
Canva.
never
I
used
love
Canva for a
Canva.
PowerPoint. It
Oh.
literally changed my life. Like
Yeah.
this, I was able to like make this like all the junior league red and like, oh,
Yes.
I think I spent very little time on the content because for me it's just, do. I spent forever like on the styling of this.
Canva is where it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a lot of fun making this. So
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
fabulous. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. I'll go ahead and stop recording, and then we'll continue.